today we're going to do a full teardown of the Meraki Espresso Machine. Okay, and so of course it's unplugged. There's no water in the tank. And what I'm going to do to start is just remove everything that's removable. Obviously, that is the easiest way to start. So I'm going to remove all this stuff. I'm going to put this to the side. Same thing here with the bean hopper. So how you take this apart, by the way, from the bottom is pretty easy. Alrighty, we're going to start by removing all of these little rubber caps here. These conceal a whole bunch of screws. So there's screws on the perimeter here, as you can see. And we're going to gain access to those in just a minute. So anyway, the first step is just to remove all the covers. And then we're going to be able to expose some of the inside. So we're getting there. They really went to town here. Oh, and then of course, I nearly forgot, underneath these black plastic feet are some more hidden screws. So we have to remove these as well. Yeah. All right, so we got the screws exposed, and now it's time to go to town on removing the screws. I'm using my handy dandy Milwaukee screwdriver right here. It is really fast, really nice. So I'm gonna do the perimeter first. Alrighty, so we got the perimeter done. Now let's get the base here. These so far are all coarse screws meant for plastic. There are a couple of machine screws in there as well. Like this one, that's a machine screw. Okay. Now, should be able to remove it. Oh, there's another one here under the sticker. Zip. So now we can expose the bottom. Very nice. All right, so what you see here first, this is the rotary pump. That's very cool. Oh, let's just take it apart bit by bit. I am in fact going to remove the rotary pump here from the base. I think it was clever to mount it to the base, you know, to reduce vibrations. It's a good solid spot to put it. Okay, but anyway, right here is the base, and you can see this is where the rotary pump was mounted. And now we got the whole bottom of the machine exposed. And I'm gonna try to save some of these parts, I don't know, for a future project. Okay, so that was the electrical connector right there that I just removed. And then we have here an input line. The water is coming in here after it's exited the water counter. So this is still the low pressure water, and the pressurized water is going out this PTFE line here. So low pressure, high pressure. Let's just remove that pin. Oh, look at that, it's leaking. Not leaking, it's, you know, it's gonna have water in it. So that's what the pin looks like. These pins, by the way, are very common in lots of machines. Can use that later. So we're gonna go ahead and use this towel, and I'll try to empty this out a little later. Oh, pulled that sucker right off. Look at that, there's a spring inside. That's interesting. Okay, so anyway, this is the rotary pump in all its glory. I mean, rotary pumps are pretty cool. I've never seen one before. So what we're gonna do next is expose what's behind this plastic guard here. So they essentially have this plastic shield, and that is supposed to, I suppose, in case you do get any water down here, it's supposed to, there we go, you know, shield this motherboard from that water. So here's the main board right there. I'm just gonna start taking things apart, I suppose. Here you can see two weighing cells here. So this one is for the grinder. This one is for the espresso extraction. All right, so next we're gonna remove this motherboard and the plate that it's mounted to. So I'm just going to gently loosen all of these connectors here. These bigger connectors here. Got some more connectors here on the side. All right, and now we're going to unscrew the mounting plate and just try to get this whole thing out of there. I will say one thing, they use a whole lot of screws. And they're a combination of screws. Some are coarse threaded like this one for plastic. Others are fine threaded that go into metal. I'm guessing there's some more screws underneath the motherboard. It would be nice if this board was somehow protected, like inside a plastic casing or something, or if they had found another spot to mount it. I mean, on the back side there's a case. Nope. So now the mounting plate is finally loosened. We can remove that guy. And that is a really thick mounting plate, by the way. 230 volts, 230 volts. And it looks like these are valves here where you could maybe either block the flow or open it. So next I'd like to remove at least one of the boilers and just have a look at the boiler. Doesn't that sound like fun? Let's do it. So first we're gonna remove this cord clip here. That's quite easy to do. So I can remove that high pressure line there. And these do look nicely done. I mean, high pressure lines like you see in any other kind of espresso machine, like a DeLonghi or a Breville. And now let's see if we can get this boiler out of there. Okay, boiler's loose. I'm gonna have to check the top part and see what needs to be removed from the top as well. All right, let's see if we can get this steam boiler out of here. Two mounting brackets. A mounting bracket here to hold this PTFE line. We are going to remove the record clip. Let's see if we can pull that sucker out of there. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut this here. And here as well. All right, there we go. Oops, of course it's gonna leak a bit. That right there is the steam boiler. And as a connector, it had this guy on here. This is kind of like a shark bite or something. I've seen these also at work, this kind of valve. You just push something through here and it stays in place and makes the connection for you. So that's pretty convenient kind of coupling there. Next, what I want to do is just remove all these connections here. So electrical connections. They have little noses on them. You gotta push to remove some of these pins. So I just got the ground wire removed. That's probably the line there. And we have to remove this. They are shielded, by the way. You see these rubber shields on there, so that's a good thing. All right, we're getting there. Almost got her. All right, last part to remove is this nut here. It's 14 millimeters. It's pretty easy to crack that open. And like I said, ordinarily you have to be super careful taking any of this stuff apart because it's generally under pressure, but this has not been used in weeks. There we go. So that was the temperature probe inside there. Oh. We're gonna remove this hose clamp here. Just lift it upwards. Oh, that was actually very easy to do. There we go. That's a steam boiler right there. I'm gonna see if I can remove these couplings here. Oh, see, this one just screws right off here. Okay, so that's the solenoid valve right there. It was attached to the top here, and that ultimately went to the steam wand. And now let's remove this guy. These are all relatively easy to turn off. So that's that part there. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what every single part is for. But what I wanna do is just see what the boiler looks like. So this is like a silicone cap. It's kind of like insulation for the boiler. And it's jacketed by this plastic. and silicone on the inside as well. I mean, it looks like silicone. Alrighty, so after removing these 3 machine screws, we can just push the boiler here out of its jacket, just like that. And there we see the boiler. Let's open that up one time. All right, and finally, here we got the boiler for steam. Would be nice if we could cut that open and have a look inside. But anyway, that's what the boiler looks like. All right, so the next thing we got is this block here, and I've just released 4 screws on it, and also the connection to the water. So I just wanted to remove that and have a look at this block right here, see what this is all about. So anyway, let me undo these wires and we'll take a look. Okay, so to finish removing this, I just have to remove the blue wire, which I'm guessing is the return line. So there we go, we got that out, and a ground wire as well. It's this ground wire here. So let's remove that guy. Alrighty. We have, essentially it's a distribution block as it looks like. Anyway, we have these 2 solenoids here. Actually, they're 2-way solenoids. So you've got an input and an exit, and there's nothing connected up here as you can see. So this is a 2-way configuration. It's basically just an open and closed solenoid valve there. And what else is interesting is this part here. This is a water counter, this white part here. This is an interesting part because it counts the water. So this is used generally for your volumetric dosing, and that way you can see it's got these 3 pins on there. That way when the water spins this guy inside, this gives a feedback back to the controller to say, okay, it's round about this amount of water. So anyway, this part was attached to where the water tank was, and this part then goes further on into the circuit. And what's kind of interesting is that they put a spring inside there. So the spring, I guess, is to keep this from kinking. And just for your information, the manufacturer of these is called Jianjing. Here's something else interesting. This right here must be the low water sensor that's attached here to this input. Let's take that out once and see what it looks like. So that's what the low water sensor looks like. At least I believe that's what it is. Interesting. Can't really see anything on there except for the symbol of this being a switch. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and just remove all of this wiring here that was here for the steam boiler so that we get a better view of the rest. So let's remove first this ground wire. They do have it routed pretty neatly, I have to say. Let's remove this blue wire. Which blue wire is it? And the green and red. Remove this temperature sensor as well. Now this is pretty interesting. Not exactly sure what this hose is for, but this is also attached to the top of the boiler. So I do have the feeling this is probably an overpressure kind of hose here. It looks a little dirty, so let's remove that guy. Try to release the vacuum there. Okay, so that's what that looks like right there. Again, it's got a spring inside, I think, to avoid kinking. So now this area, nice and free. I would say for the next step, let's go ahead and remove the steam, or rather the boiler for the extraction. And here you can see this is probably for the overpressure as well. It's a little dirty, and I've already removed part of the top, so let's just see what we can do to get this guy out of here. I think I'll undo the connections first. I just removed the ground wire, this blue wire. Here we've got a red and yellow wire. That's some kind of feedback back to this control board. Not exactly sure what that is. Remove this brown wire. Generally, brown is the line leading away from the source and blue's coming back. Also have this white. Let's see if we can get this guy out of there. And I'll also go ahead and remove the overpressure line here. Might as well get everything off that is obvious. Oops. Oh, I think I can pull it up out of the top. All right, first I've got to remove this black plastic plate. That's basically a distribution plate for these two solenoid valves, because we have to get at a record behind them. So we're gonna have to remove this record right here in order to pull the boiler out. So I just got that clip right there that I pulled out. Yep. I'm gonna pull this clip out as well. That goes directly to the Brew group. This is quite a complicated machine. To be honest, I have not dealt with one this complicated before. Keep that in mind. It's really kind of something. See if we can pull that out yet or not. I'm gonna remove this blue line here. Also this brown. Again, I am not suggesting you do this at home. Don't do this at home. And I see that there's a connecting plate. This connecting plate is blocking the boiler from coming out this way. Also, what we're gonna do is remove these screws in here. That's basically holding the top on to the body. So you can see this is the top part here. This is made out of aluminum and it's being held onto the body. I think both are metal. I hope that this teardown is not too boring. I know it's super long. You can tell these are machine screws because they have a really fine thread on them. And they can be machine screws because they're holding metal to metal, so. Okay. Perfect. And now we can pull the boiler all the way out. Look at that. Oh, very nice. Now we're getting somewhere. Look at that. That is the Brew boiler right there in all of its glory. We'll take a closer look at that later, I suppose. Let's set that off to the side. And this right here is the Brew group. So this is solid metal right here. It's quite hefty, to be honest. Here's the Brew group where the portafilter gets locked in. Here's a shower screen. Here is the little water spout. Here's where the water spout was connected to one of those solenoid valves inside. Here is where the water was going to the Brew group. And these two brown things, they should be like an over temperature kind of cutoff. And this right here is the heater for the Brew group. All right, next I would like to remove this power cable and this black plastic casing here. Get these two things out of the way. So let's unscrew that. This bracket, by the way, is already kind of cracked, unfortunately. I'm gonna remove these two wires as well. The ground from the ground bus. Wire, and we're gonna remove these two connectors here as well. Just gotta press on a little tongue in order to release them. There we go. So another board with the heatsink on it. So this is where the power comes in and gets attached to the board. Okay, that's out of the way. Let's remove this collar here that was holding the bottom of the boiler. Oh, actually, that whole thing just slides right out. Actually, this is the middle tower right here. And the middle tower is made out of aluminum. So this part looks like cast aluminum on the bottom. And the upper part seems to be painted. It's painted white. I don't know if there's any other process to it, but should both be aluminum. Now we're getting somewhere. Now all we really have left inside is the motor for the grinder, the two scales, these two bus bars, a couple of holders, that's about it. All right, well next I'd like to remove the motor and this black thing. So let's remove those two guys. Now, how do I get the motor out? I'm not sure, but there's 4 screws here. So I have the feeling that the 4 screws are for this tower here for the grinder. Let's just remove it and see what happens. Oh, okay, so that is the tower right there with the motor still attached. Here's the deionizer chute. Yeah, that's that. Let's move on. Oh, this looks like a second water level sensor right there. Let's remove that guy. And I would like to remove this and see what is this thing. There's another board of some sort. Not really sure what kind of board this is. What you do see is that they've integrated these kind of clips into everything to keep things kind of nice and neat, which is nice. Let's just open this up, see what's inside. Not really sure what that board is for, if I'm being honest. A big capacitor on it, a couple of connections. These look to be toroidal, those inductors. But yeah, another board. And just in case you guys are wondering, I am an engineer and I deal with automation, so software for automation for large machines. So I don't get to do too much with hardware, if I'm being honest. Let's remove these two bus bars. Not much left now. Water coupling. All right, so this is where the water comes into the machine. So like a little filter inside there and exits there. And now all that's really left on there is that plastic tower and the two scales. Let's just remove the plastic tower right away. All right, so that right there was the plastic steam tower. And it's got what feels like a rubber or silicone gasket on there. On the table here, guys, I got all the parts that I took out of the Meraki. Let's just take a look at the casing, and then I'm gonna kind of move piece by piece through the parts here. So this is the bottom part of the casing here. You will see this is molded plastic. This is where the main board sits. Something I don't like is that the main board sits just like this. What I do kind of like is at least they put a drain hole here so that if water were to get down in here, it has a chance to hopefully go through this drain hole. But of course, I don't appreciate that this is just sitting here close to the bottom. There is a piece of plastic that goes on top, like a thin plastic sheet that gets attached to this, but not ideal. The casing, we got three towers essentially. We got this as the steam boiler tower, plastic. Then we've got this one as the grinder tower, also plastic. Finally, we've got the middle part, okay? So the middle part has got the brew boiler inside, and this, in fact, is metal. So this is aluminum, and you can see that the holes here, these are machined holes, are threaded, tapped. So this part actually metal. Then we've got the casing itself for the rest of the body. So the rest of that is just all plastic, as you already knew, molded plastic. And you got here two weight sensors. I was not able to remove those. Here's the water tank. What's kind of clever about the water tank is that it's got a magnet on one side, it's got a float on the other, and it's got two reed switches here mounted to the bottom. And that way, whether you have it like this or whether you have it turned around, it's able to determine either way that you got water in the tank and that the tank is installed. Now, before we move on, let's take a look at what houses the brew group. This has got holes threaded and tapped for machine screws. So it's actually pretty nice. Painted white. We got the brew group here itself. So the brew group is got a shower screen that is branded with Meraki. Well, first of all, it's got a horseshoe shaped brew group heater, which is really nice. I do like the fact that this is heated. It's also heavy. There's a lot of mass there. And it's got two 150 Celsius thermostats on there. So these would break the circuit if it would overheat. So also good to see that it's got those protection devices on there. And it's got these two PTFE lines. This one goes for the water spout here in the bottom, and this one goes to the brew group. Just a short look at this. This is the HMI unit here. I showed this in the original video. We've got two PCBs on there and a ribbon connection connecting the screen to the one PCB, and you've got the RFID reader on there as well. Now let's move on to something I think people are quite interested to see. We have a couple of boilers. So people are wondering, okay, what does the boiler look like? What's the material of the boiler? What's attached? So this is a boiler right here for the steam, and this steam boiler has got more capacity in it than does the other boiler. This is the other one right here. The brew boiler, I left more attached to this one so we can have a look at it. Anyway, these are stainless steel boilers. They've got, first of all, of course, the electrical circuit. I'll show that on this one. And they've got a temperature probe on it. The temperature probe looks like this right here. And I wasn't sure if this was a temperature probe or if it was this green one, because these both look very similar, to be honest. But this one here with the white cord on it has got 2 wires in it. And I did test for the resistance. So when I attached my multimeter and just put it in my fingers for a while, you could see the resistance go down. So yes, this one right here is the temperature sensor, and you got one of these in each of the boilers, in the steam boiler as well as in the brew boiler. And then you've also got this sensor. Maybe it's some kind of pressure sensor, I'm not really sure. So we got those, and then we got a couple of circuits. For example, here on the brew boiler, we got a water circuit on there, and we've also got an electrical circuit. And I will show you those circuits now. All right, so looking at the top of this brew boiler here, we essentially have 2 circuits. We got an electrical circuit here, and we've also got a water circuit exiting. So let's look at the electrical circuit first. Let's say that this is the line side, and it comes in here. It goes through a high temperature thermostat. This is a 150 degrees Celsius thermostat, and exits there, and then it goes here onto the heating element. So the reason that they have this high voltage thermostat is in case the temperature would ever get above that, this circuit would break, and therefore there would be no more current flowing through there. So anyway, it goes through the heating element and back out this side, and it exits here at the top of this heating element, and it goes again through a 150 degree high temperature thermostat and exits out here on the load side. That is the electrical circuit. Now we also have at the top, we have a T fitting here for the record, as you can see. So it enters here and it exits out these 2 spots. These 2 spots, we have 2 different solenoids, as you can see here. This is the Brew solenoid. So this one is in a 3-way configuration. That means that the water enters here, and it can either go on here through the other side, through a PTF high pressure line to the brew group, or it can exit out here on the top of this silicone tube to go back down into the drip tray. Now in the other solenoid, this solenoid is in a 2-way configuration. You can see that the water enters on this side here, and it would exit on this side with the high pressure PTFE line going to the water spout. So this is a 2-way configuration. So that's it. Those are the 2 circuits that we have on top of this brew boiler. First the electrical circuit, and then the water circuit. Of course, the heart of the unit really as well, you could say, is this right here. This is the pump. So this is a rotary pump, and it is mounted on these rubberized feet. So it's got dampeners on there so that it vibrates less in the machine. So that's pretty cool. This right here is the steam wand. So this is quite a big sucker, and steam wand works really well. Let's move on to the grinder. So we got the grinder right here, and I think the grinder actually looks pretty decent. I mean, the base of it is made out of metal. As you can see there, it looks like it was actually made pretty well. And this is the top part of the grinder. The adjustment is stepless, so that's nice. And for an encoder on there, it's got a potentiometer. So this potentiometer mounted on the side, you know, it had a gear on top that I lost. And so you would know, based on the position here, what your potentiometer was going to have for a resistance, and therefore you knew what your grind setting was at. So that is the grinder right there. Pretty neat. It's attached to this motor here. And attached to that is also a plasma generator. So the plasma generator is what's responsible for creating the negative ions for what's in the nose of the grinder, the deionizer. So the deionizer is responsible for removing the electric charge from the grounds as they exit so that they fall nice and fluffy into the cup. Yeah, so plasma generator, very cool. That's what the grinder looks like right there. These get attached to the plasma generator, and there's 2 pins here at the exit of the chute. Those 2 pins are what are responsible for removing the electric static from the grounds. Something else pretty neat that I removed from the machine is this right here. This is a water counter. Normally you see these in volumetric machines like the DeLonghi Dedica, for example. What they are is just a water wheel inside. So you can remove this just by twisting it a little bit counterclockwise. So as water is moving past this wheel inside, turns that sensor, or those two contacts essentially, and those get picked up and sent via these pins on the outside to the controller. And what have we got left? We have another block of 2 solenoids. As you can see there, these are two-way solenoids. You just got an input and an exit, and the solenoid either allows for the water to flow through there or not. So when potential is applied, basically a piston gets sucked up inside of there and allows the water to flow past. And by the way, this is what housed the steam boiler. So the steam boiler was put inside this guy. I guess this is like a thermal housing. It is plastic. Here's what one of the water sensor looks like. Water sensors looks like. It's just a little reed switch. And then finally we got this guy here. So this looks like a power distribution. This is where the cord comes in and gets distributed this way as potentials. And I think there's also a power converter in there too from AC to DC. So that's what that looks like. As a conclusion, what do I think about the machine, the build, the design? How easy is it to take apart and everything? It's not that bad to take apart. It is a bit of a complicated machine. It's probably the most complicated coffee machine that I've ever taken apart. A lot of connections, a ton of screws. As far as the build quality in that, it's hard for me to really say. You'd have to really just see how the longevity is on these machines. Really just have to wait and see, well, how are the connections? Do the connections hold? You know, are they all sealed really well? What I can tell you is, in my experience, they use standard components, standard methods of making connections. To me, it looks pretty normal. And as you saw, a fancy rotary pump, a couple of stainless steel boilers. So I think the parts that were used are pretty good. I know some people will be turned off by the PTFE lines in there, those high pressure, essentially plastic lines for the water. That's just how it goes. And the case itself, you know, being made mostly of plastic doesn't bother me personally, but I know a lot of other people, they do get bothered by that. All right, guys, thanks very much for watching the video. I hope that you liked it, and I hope it was interesting for you. Until next time, I say happy coffee drinking and happy espresso drinking. Bye now.